Hey everyone, Joe here to give you a basic tutorial on audio processing, which is the act of manipulating your audio after you have recorded it. For reference, when working inside of Adobe Audition, your effects rack will be located on the middle left of the screen, namely here, and it offers some presets already set in for you. Or additionally, you can access each individual effect of Adobe Audition by clicking this little arrow and diving down the menus of the various effects. And you can, of course, apply multiple effects across the same track, whether it is in waveform or multi-track view. So let's get on to what some of these audio processing effects are. The first kind of audio processing that producers will use is dynamics processing. Now, producers turn to audio processing to tweak or tune up a recording or radio signal to make it a little more commercially viable, and there's a lot of options that you can use, as demonstrated by this clip.
This is a demonstration of a voice processor. Right now, there's no processing on my voice whatsoever. It's a raw recording, and while it sounds fine, a voice processor will allow us to tune it up a little bit, using things like a compressor, an expander, a peak limiter, and a little bit of equalization, among others. Let's kick the voice processor in now. Despite the obvious level difference, there are some other things that have changed about my voice. We're using compression, expansion, and a little bit of equalization on the bottom end to give it a fuller, more commercial sound. This is a demonstration of how a voice processor can be used to tune up an announcer's voice.
Now, a dynamic processor changes the dynamic range of the program material by either reducing or increasing the dynamic range of the audio. And dynamic processing includes a lot of things, as discussed in the clip: compression, limiting, expansion, and gating. So what exactly are those things? Well, let's start with compression. A compressor is the most basic tool used for processing. It enables you to control sounds that have a wide dynamic range. By reducing the dynamic range, the overall level of that audio can then be increased. This helps when trying to make certain audio stand out over other audio, most notably with your voice over some music, as demonstrated in this clip.
This is a demonstration of compression and how it can help your voice stand out in a commercial or public service announcement. My voice right now has no compression applied, and even with this light piece of music, it gets lost. By using compression, which we'll turn on now, you can hear that my voice has become much denser and louder, and it stands out above the music. That's one of the benefits of compression.
Taking the concept of compression to kind of an extreme is the act of limiting. A limiter is basically a compressor with a very high compression ratio, with some going as high as 100:1. Now, limiters are used to prevent hard clipping and to increase average audio levels, as demonstrated by this clip.
This is a demonstration of how a limiter works. Unlike the compressor's output that's based upon a ratio of input to output, a limiter has a hard, fixed output. Let's turn it on now. As you listen to my voice, I'm going to turn up the input. If you're looking at this recording on a set of meters, you'll find those meters stay relatively the same. But my voice appears to get louder and louder and harder sounding as we turn up the input, because the output is fixed.
In contrast to compression is expansion. An expander is the opposite of a compressor, as demonstrated by this clip.
An expander is just the opposite of a compressor. Instead of making things loud, it makes things quiet. Let's turn it on now. Notice what the expander does when I pause. Unlike the compressor that's turning everything up, the expander is turning things down. It's very useful to help eliminate unwanted background noise.
To provide a little more detail, upward expansion makes loud segments even louder, and downward expansion is used to lower all that background noise, as discussed in the clip. Next up is gating. Now, a noise gate is a dynamics processor used to reduce background noise even more so than an expander, as demonstrated by this clip.
This is a demonstration of a noise gate. It's very similar to an expander, although a little more abrupt. Let's turn it on now. As you can hear, when I pause, the noise gate closes. It only opens when the sound goes above a specific level, and when it drops below that level, it closes automatically. Noise gates are good to use to eliminate background noise.
In addition to eliminating background noise, noise gates can also be used to create a lot of special effects, such as shortening reverb or delay times. Next up is a very complex and delicate form of audio processing, frequency equalization, or commonly known as EQ. Equalizers are primarily used to shape the frequency response and tone of a recording, but as I said, they're very complex, so basically the rule number one of EQ is if you're not really sure what to do, don't do anything and leave it alone. Although in this day and age of digital editing, at least the undo button can be your friend when applying such an effect. Rule number 2, after working on a project for a long time, give your ears a rest and come back to it with a fresh perspective before doing that final EQ work so you actually know you really like what you've done. Now there are 2 types of equalizers, graphic and parametric. So let's talk about graphic EQ. Frequencies are based on third, half, and full octave intervals. Each slider has its own frequency, and most equalizers have 10 to 15 frequency bands. On the other hand is parametric EQ. Parametric equalizers offer maximum flexibility. The user selects the frequency, the bandwidth surrounding the frequency, and the amount of cut or boost for that frequency. The quality factor, or Q, is an adjustment that is made by selecting the bandwidth surrounding the center frequency. The next form of audio processing is filters. There's a lot of different kinds. A high pass or low cut filter blocks all frequencies below a preset frequency, as demonstrated by this clip.
Typically, building rumble is a mechanical sound coming through the floor, up the mic stand, into the microphone, and usually a shock mount will eliminate that. But occasionally the building rumble is so bad it's acoustic in nature or sound. Take a listen to this. You might not be able to hear it on small computer speakers, but on any size monitor speaker you should be able to hear the rumble that's going on in the background. Listen closely. Now, let's eliminate that building rumble with a high-pass filter. Once the filter is set, only frequencies above that filter can be heard. That's a demonstration of how you can use a high-pass filter to eliminate acoustic or mechanical building rumble.
A low-pass or high-cut filter blocks all frequencies above a preset frequency, as demonstrated by this clip.
This is a demonstration of a low-pass filter. A low-pass filter works by allowing only those frequencies below the filter frequency to pass. Listen to my voice as we apply different low-pass filters. First, let's chop off the top end at 10,000 hertz. Now you're hearing my voice with everything above 10,000 hertz cut away. Only those frequencies below 10,000 hertz are allowed to pass. Now let's drop it down to 7,500 hertz. At 7,500 hertz, it's not a dramatic change in my voice, but you can notice the top is beginning to come off, and there is a difference. Let's drop it down to 5,000 hertz. Here at 5,000 hertz, everything from 5,000 and above is gone. Only those frequencies below 5,000 are allowed to pass. And finally, let's drop it down to 3,000 hertz. At 3,000 hertz, we're getting very close to telephone quality. Everything above 3,000, or a lot of the energy in my voice, is now gone. This is a low-pass filter.
A band-pass filter establishes a low and high cutoff frequency, allowing the frequencies in between to pass unaffected, essentially combining a high-pass and low-pass filter into one filter. Meanwhile, a notch filter blocks a very narrow frequency band, as demonstrated by this clip.
This is a demonstration of a notch filter. A notch filter can eliminate specific frequencies from a recording. The recording I've chosen is one of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's most famous speeches. Notice, though, it's filled with scratch and hiss noises. We're going to use the notch filter to remove these. First, the original speech.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And now the speech after we located the hiss and the popping and clicking and eliminated it with our notch filter.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
This has been a demonstration of the notch filter.
Another useful form of audio processing is de-essing. A de-esser is a specialty compressor that has an adjustable frequency range so that the frequency of the sibilant S can be determined and attenuated with a very narrow bandwidth compression, as demonstrated by this clip.
While most people don't have problems with sibilant S's, some people do. And a de-esser is designed to do just that, remove the st sound of the S. And while it cannot eliminate it completely, it can make it much less offending. Let's try this old exercise. Sarah sells seashells by the seashore. That was without the de-esser. Now let's repeat the exact same phrase with the de-esser. Sarah sells seashells by the seashore. And that's how a de-esser can help someone who has that sibilant S.
Now, because everyone is different and their frequency range of their sibilant S's are a bit different, de-essers have to be adjusted to each particular person in order to be effective. Here we have an EQ chart which gives you a little bit of information about frequency ranges and what EQing those frequency ranges can do to your audio. So when talking about the 20 to 80 Hertz range or the sub-bass range, these frequencies are pretty much felt more than heard, and they create a sense of power. However, this is also the rumble zone, and too much sub-bass makes music unclear and sound really muddy. Then if you're talking about the 80 to 250 Hertz range, that's your bass range. These are fundamental notes of the rhythm section and drums, and the bottom end of guitars. Too much of this frequency also makes things sound boomy or muddy to a listener. Moving into the 250 to 2 kilohertz or low mids range of frequency, these are the bottom ends of most instruments and their low end harmonics. Boosting that 500 to 800 hertz range makes things sound flat and hard. 1 to 2 kilohertz, that improves your intelligibility, but be careful or it will sound like a tinny car horn, which no one wants to hear. When you move into the 2 to 4 kilohertz range, that's your mid-highs. The human ear is most sensitive to this range, which is also the range that contains speech recognition sounds. Too much boost in this area causes listener fatigue. If a mix sounds harsh, you're going to want to cut from here first in your EQ. In the 4 to 6 kilohertz range, that's your presence range. Clarity of the mix and vocal definition, including articulation and breathiness, are all found within this 4 to 6 kilohertz range. Boosting in this frequency range makes music seem closer, but be careful. Too much boost also creates a biting sound. And in that high frequency range, the 6 to 16 kilohertz range, that's the brightness range. Brightness and clarity all come from this range of frequencies. The risks of boosting in this frequency range is sizzle and vocal sibilance. However, a little boost in this region when done properly adds an open airiness to the sound. The next forms of audio processing are effects that create dimension. Audio can place you in the middle of a space without exactly needing surround sound equipment at any given point in time. Dimension processing adds perceived size or depth to a recording. Examples include echo, slap delay, as demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration of slap delay. Slap delay is generally a single repeat of a sound with a delay of over 35 milliseconds. What you're hearing right now is a slap delay with 40 milliseconds of delay. When adding this effect to music, it's a good idea to adjust the repeat time in relation to the beat or tempo of the music.
Doubling, which is demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration of slap delay with less than 35 milliseconds of delay. Sometimes it's called doubling because, as you can hear, there appear to be two of me. There is no feedback involved in slap delay of less than 35 milliseconds.
Reverberation, or reverb as it's commonly known, which is demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration about electronic reverberation. Right now, I'm standing in what's called a dead studio, meaning there's little or no reverberation. Well, we don't necessarily want that sound, particularly when we're mixing voice over music. So we want to be able to expand the voice or give it some depth, and we do that with reverberation. Here's a standard small room that I'll kick in now. A small room adds depth to your voice and helps it blend with music when you want to lay voice over music and combine the two. As we move into a medium-sized room, you can hear that there's a lot of depth in here, and the delays and the reverberation are longer. We use this typically for a special effect. And finally, let's slip into a concert hall. As you can hear, this is a very large space, and it's only used typically for special effects, but it is a lot of fun to play with. Hello?
Chorus, demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration of reverberation, or reverb, and how it can change the sound of a musical instrument. This first recording is a piano in a studio. It's a great sound, but it's a little dry, and we can't really tell where the piano's at. Take a listen. Now we're going to take the same recording of the piano, add some reverb, and take a listen to how it changes the sound of the piano.
Phase shifting, demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration of the phase shift effect. Listen carefully to this first cut of piano music. Nothing has been done to it. It's as it was recorded in the studio. Here it is. Now, let's take the same piano music and apply a little chorus with a little bit of phase shift, and what you're going to hear happening is that the upper range of the piano appears to be changing frequency and moving around just a little bit. It's a subtle effect, but it is there.
Flanging, demonstrated by this cut.
Another way to affect a voice is with flanging. This is an example of flanging and what it can do to the voice. It adds many unique effects depending upon how it's adjusted. This is flanging.
And reamping, demonstrated by this cut.
This is a demonstration of reamping. What we've done is we've played back a piano track in a room with a pair of studio monitors. Across the room, we've placed another microphone, and we've re-recorded or reamped that recording. In this particular case, we placed the microphone facing another wall so that the monitor speakers were in the microphone's dead spot, giving us a very unique sound. And now we've mixed that sound back into the piano. Here's the piano track without any reamping or effect. Now let's listen to the reamped recording of that same piano. Now let's blend the two together and see what kind of sound we can create. Reamping is one of the most fun things you can do because it's all one big experiment, and you can play with it until you get the sound you want.
So let's get into a little more detail on what some of those really are. An echo or delay uses one or more repeats of the original sound to create an effect. Slap delay is a single repeat of a sound with a delay of over 35 milliseconds. A single slap delay of less than 35 milliseconds? That's called doubling. A feature of many delays is a feedback control, which feeds the delayed signal back into the delay input so that a delay of the delay is created. The next dimensional processing is reverb or reverberation, to be more specific. Reverb is a complex combination of multiple randomly mixed delays designed to simulate a specific acoustical space. Reverb can be used to make it sound like you are standing in the middle of a massive cathedral or empty hall, or inside of a small, cramped space, depending on how you use it. The adjustable parameters of reverb include input level, delay, or space, and decay time. Reverb can be used to bring a track to the front or blend it into the background. Next up is chorus phase shifting and flanging. The chorus effect is based on tricking the listener into thinking there are several of something, when instead there's really only one of them. A phase shift creates the illusion of a swooshing motion in the music or audio in general, whereas the flanging effect is created by adjusting the delay time of a chorus processor to 10 to 20 milliseconds of delay. Last up on the dimension processing is reamping. Reamping is used to simulate a natural sounding environment. To achieve such an effect, you take an audio signal and play it back through an amplifier and monitor speaker in the studio. You place a microphone, or pair of microphones for stereo audio, and in the studio, you re-record the track using the ambience of the studio to create a variety of effects. By experimenting with the placement of the speaker and the microphones in the studio, you can create some unique acoustical effects. Most, if not all, radio broadcasting operates on a broadcast audio delay. This is certainly true of talk programming. During the opening of a radio show, while the host is talking, the digital audio processor begins introducing a delay of a few seconds so that by the time the first caller is taken, there is typically a full 7 seconds of delay. This is called ramping up the delay. There are many instances why this may be useful, including but not limited to should the caller accidentally drop an obscenity that shouldn't be going over the air. This delay essentially allows the broadcast to dump or delete those 7 seconds of broadcast and then re-ramp up the delay. At the end of the show, when the announcer is wrapping up the program, the producer deactivates the delay and the unit ramps down from the 7-second delay to real time. Additionally, this delay can be set to any number of seconds, but typically 7 is about the average for most broadcast audio delays. Another common form of audio processing is normalizing. Normalizing corrects the problems associated with a track that has been recorded with too little amplitude or volume, or has been recorded too softly, as demonstrated by this clip.
Normalizing is one of the most basic tools of digital recording. My voice is recorded at -12 decibels right now, and that's great for a digital recording. but to make maximum use of the bit depth and of the signal-to-noise ratio of the recorder, we normalize. My voice is now normalized at 100%. As you can hear, there's a significant change in the level of my voice from what it was. Normalizing is not a patch for a bad recording. Remember, always record at -12 to -10 decibels for digital, and then normalize if you need to.
A common piece of hardware found in audio production are voice processors. These are pieces of hardware that offer various different EQ availabilities all in one single piece of hardware. A typical voice processor includes a high-quality mic preamp with phantom power for condenser microphones, a compressor that when turned on achieves this.
On this cut, we're going to be adjusting the compressor on the voice processor. Let's go ahead and kick it into place. And as you heard it pop in there, you also notice the level of my voice drop just a little bit. There's a range of adjustments here that we can work with, and some of them will make me sound a little bit harder and a little bit funnier sounding. You notice my voice is almost cutting in and out. You're hearing the compressor breathe. And we'll back the compressor off just a little bit. So what we want to do here is come up with a setting that enhances our voice and levels our voice. And right now, we're getting pretty close to that. This is one of those things that each person has to do individually so that it levels their voice and at the same time provides the kind of bottom-end sound that they want. A compressor can give you a very fat sound. And right now, we're probably at an optimum sound for my voice.
An expander/noise gate that when turned on achieves this kind of effect.
To this point, we've adjusted the input to the mic preamp and the compressor. Now we want to adjust the expander to get rid of this room noise that we're in. I'll pause just a moment so you can hear what we're talking about. Now, the way we do that is with an expander, and we'll slowly bring up the threshold and the ratio so that we reach a point where we're eliminating the room when I stop talking. Notice that it suddenly got a lot quieter. And the reason it got quieter is because when I pause, the expander, which is just the opposite of a compressor, is turning the levels down. That way, it gets very quiet in between the pauses in my voice, and we can eliminate a lot of room noise. The expander can be over-adjusted, in which case it begins to sound rather funny, or it can be under-adjusted where it really doesn't do anything, like right now. So let's adjust it back to where it was doing something as we had it before, and you'll find that as we pause, the room disappears. And that's how to properly adjust an expander.
A de-esser for this kind of effect.
The purpose of a de-esser on a voice processor is to eliminate voice sibilants, such as Sarah sells seashells at the seashore, or those sizzling S sounds that can be very annoying. A de-esser has to be adjusted for each particular individual, and you basically do it by sweeping the frequencies and finding where their sibilant S sounds are occurring and then attenuating them. For example, let's do Sarah again. I'll emphasize the S's. Sarah sells seashells at the seashore. Now I'll kick in the de-esser that's been adjusted for my voice. Sarah sells seashells by the seashore. Notice the difference?
An equalizer, a high-pass, low-pass, or band-pass filters, and a limiter. Each of these are used in combination to make the voice sound as good as it possibly can in one singular piece of hardware. Similar to voice processors, there exist effects processors, which have many different possible variations of audio processing, all built into one singular piece of hardware. Effects include endless variations on reverb, slap delay, echo, chorusing, flanging, phase shifting, pitch shifting, time compression and expansion, tremolo, vocal harmonizing, video game sounding electronic weapons fire, vibrato, random pitch shifting and panning, vocal stutter, and complete reversal of words and phrases and sweep tones, just to name a few of the thousands of effects available on some processors. To showcase some of the powers that exist within these singular pieces of hardware is this clip.
This is a demonstration of an Eventide harmonizer. An Eventide harmonizer is capable of thousands of digital effects. I'm going to demonstrate two. The first is on voice. This is what our voice track sounds like without any processing. Now let's kick in the harmonizer and hear what we can do to this voice. Here is a set of drums that are basically dry, recorded in the studio. Now let's kick in the harmonizer and see what happens to our drum set. These are just two of the thousands of effects that an Eventide harmonizer can create.
Did you ever wonder why a song played on one radio station just sounds better and is more appealing to you than that very same song played on a different radio station? That's because of broadcast audio processing. Broadcast audio processing is based on a psychoacoustic musical image created by the program director in conjunction with the station engineer. It creates the overall subconscious sound of the station that draws in the audience they are hoping to appeal to through the use of audio processing on the station as a whole. Meanwhile, down at Suffolk County Community College Internet Radio, we have to deal with webcast audio processing because we're an internet radio station. Audio is therefore prepared based on the average site visitor. Audio needs to have a good signal-to-noise ratio, and the frequency response should be left flat. Heavy compression and limiting should be avoided in order to create the best experience for listeners via the internet. And that's it, the basics of audio processing. There was a lot to cover in this video, so if you need to go back and watch it, by all means do so. It is here to help. And of course, if you want to learn more about this, go read your textbook. It dives more deeply in depth explaining what each thing is, a little bit more in detail than I can do here. And of course, if you are a hands-on learner, you can always sign out some time in our radio studios to come in and play with the effects in Adobe Audition to hear for yourself what kind of effects they have on your audio and what kind of creations you can make.